How's it going, everyone? It is Panjano here, and this is the XDefiant Ultimate FPS Increase Guide. In this video, we're going to be covering everything you need to know from start to finish when it comes to game settings, optimizations, and small adjustments you can make to ensure that you get the absolute best FPS possible, lowest input latency, balance of in-game settings to make the game still look great, but see a significant performance improvement regardless of what sort of system you're running on, whether it's old, new, high-end, low-end, Intel, AMD, Nvidia. But leveling up your gaming doesn't end there. You can take control and enhance your entire system's audio using SteelSeries sonar. This works on nearly all headsets and mics and lets you dial in your gear for the best experience. From a fully customizable EQ with presets for your favorite games to ensure that you get the best footstep, utility, or feedback in those crucial moments, a full audio mix to easily route or adjust the volume of Discord, teammates, in-game audio or music, and a super simple, fully customizable microphone EQ to make the best or worst microphones sound their best and fit your voice with easy to choose presets. And it's free. Head over to SteelSeries Sonar using the link in the description down below. Select download. Inside of SteelSeries GG, head over to Sonar. Throughout the setup, select the audio device you want to route all aspects of your system's audio to, and finally select your microphone. Inside of the mixer, you can adjust the levels for all different aspects of your system's audio. Head up to mic, go to the preset EQ options at the top for easy to use options, or again, take full control of the EQ yourself, where you can perform a quick microphone record test for bass audio, where you can play this back, make any adjustments, and see how you'll sound once your preset is dialed in. To hear more game audio or more chat, find the chat mix at the bottom, adjust the dial to match your preference. So level up your gaming today and support the channel by downloading SteelSeries Sonar utilizing the link in the description down below. To jump straight into the optimizations, we're quickly going to be going over a few very basic Windows options just to double check to ensure you're getting the best FPS not just in XDefiant but all games in which you play. Inside of Windows 10 or 11, hit the Windows button and type GPU space settings. Go to change default graphics settings. If you do see the option for hardware accelerated GPU scheduling, it's recommended to have this set to on. Optimizations for windowed games I would highly recommend enabling. Even if you're not planning on playing XDefiant in a windowed mode, you may wish to try out the DirectX 12 mode, which is available within inside of the game. Alongside other DirectX 12 games, they technically don't run in a proper full screen mode, they are actually running in a windowed mode. For best practice on all PCs, whether it's high-end, low-end, old or new, I would also recommend that you take yourself down to the bottom right hand side, click on the task icon tray, and start closing out of any and all applications you do not need open when playing certain games. If you would like to dive deeper into Windows optimizations and advanced techniques in which you can utilize to potentially drastically reduce latency inside of all of your games, alongside getting more out of the hardware in which you've paid for, I will link my advanced FPS companion guide in the description down below, which you can follow along with. If you've played XDefiant and the performance is basically unplayable, we're not talking about lower than expected, to the point where the game is practically unplayable, there could be a few different fixes which are available to you. For those of you on Nvidia GPUs, it is highly recommended that you download the brand new Nvidia driver which launched with XDefiant on the day it came out. I would definitely recommend downloading that because it can fix many issues that the game may have, especially when it comes to locked FPS or lower than expected performance. For those of you on AMD GPUs, if you happened to have had an Nvidia GPU installed to your system before upgrading to that AMD Radeon GPU, in some rare instances with XDefiant, there may still be Nvidia drivers on your system that you're no longer using that could be causing massive FPS drops on some AMD GPUs. The two main fixes for this is to either switch over to the DirectX 12 rendering mode within inside of the game, which could fix the issue, or alternatively, heading over to Google and getting the DDU or display driver uninstaller tool. This allows you to remove any and all display drivers that are on your system completely. Select the Nvidia drivers for the GPU you're no longer using, select to remove those drivers from your system, restart, and you could find that your FPS issues are completely solved. With all of the boring stuff out of the way, we can now jump into the game. Before you jump in and start adjusting your in-game settings, I would highly recommend navigating over to play and going inside of the practice zone so you can see a live instance of the game that you can quickly and easily go back into and see these settings being changed in real time. Whether you're doing this from the main menu, in-game, or the practice zone, press escape or go to the top right hand side and go inside of the in-game settings, going through a few of the core options. Field of view, this is complete personal preference, but you may find that you perform better on a slightly higher field of view because more importantly, you can change the behavior of aiming down sight to be independent or consistent with your field of view changes. Consistent, you'll find when you're aiming down sight, it's slightly further zoomed out, which you may prefer because this will reduce overall visual recoil. If you want to see further in the distance and keep the normal ADS field of view, then set this back to independent. Scroll slightly down towards the bottom to user interface settings. I would recommend switching damage numbers to on. Enemy health bars, I would also recommend setting on because it gives you a lot more feedback on the current enemy's health that you are engaging with. I would then also recommend enabling the FPS display, ping display, and network info display. With all of that out of the way, let's jump into the video and graphics options. We'll first of all start off with a few core settings settings that you need to adjust specifically for your system, and we'll then move over to the optimized presets for either esports settings or a recommended balance that I would highly recommend that you use. You can pick from either of those. Display resolution should be set to your monitor's native resolution. Refresh rate should be set to the highest number available with inside of here. So go through all the options and set this to the highest number that shows up. Triple buffering is going to be switched off in every case. For reduced latency, I would highly recommend that you switch this on, but only for those of you on AMD Radeon or Intel GPUs, or if your GPU just doesn't support NVIDIA Reflex. It gets you very close to the results of NVIDIA Reflex, but obviously on unsupported GPUs. For those of you that do have NVIDIA Reflex available, I would highly recommend switching this to on and switching reduced latency to off if you're using Reflex as well. Brightness, I would at least set this to 15, or in many cases even go all the way up to 20, and you'll be surprised how much more you can see. DirectX 12 renderer is something that we'll be coming back to at the end of this video after we've changed all of the settings and optimizations. VSync mode is going to be switched off in game regardless if you're utilizing G-Sync, FreeSync, or just standard refresh rates. FPS limit for now we're going to be switching to off, but I would actually recommend implementing an FPS limit later on in the video. The only other option that you would need to change for your personal preference is going to be the sharpening setting. On screen now, you'll be able to see two optimized presets. On the left hand side, we have the esports preset, and on the right hand side, we have the recommended preset. For those of you that want the absolute best FPS possible, you don't care about visuals, the esports settings on the left hand side are for you. On the right hand side, these are a mixture of settings to ensure that the game still looks great, but with the best optimized settings possible. All you need to do is simply pause the video, copy all of the settings in the presets, and apply those to your game. Once you've applied all of the settings from the preset to your game, boot into the practice area and see how the game performs and how it looks. If you're happy with how it looks and would like even more FPS, go down to the render scale option within inside of the game, change this from 100 to 85, see how that looks, change it down to 75, and eventually down to 50. To counteract lowering the render scale, adjust the sharpen setting inside of the game and find a fine balance of render scale and sharpen that you are happy with both visually and the FPS it gives you. For me, I utilize 75% on all systems. If you decided to go with the esports config, if you would like to go one step further with this, you can actually jump into the XDefiant config settings. This isn't going to be for everyone. This is only for those of you that want the absolute best FPS possible and you don't care how bad the game looks. You will need to close out of the game to do this. Go down to the Windows File Explorer, go to Documents, My Games, and go to XDefiant. You'll then be able to find a BC_GFX settings CFG file. Press the Windows key, type Notepad, grab that GFX settings file and drop it into the notepad. On screen now on the right hand side, you'll see some recommendations for settings you can find within inside of this config file that I would recommend that you change to either 0 or false to disable them. I would recommend that you pause the video, copy those settings to your config file. Once that's all completed, navigate to the top left hand side to File and select Save. Now, if for any reason you want to go back to the default in-game settings, find this graphics settings CFG, right click on it and just delete the file. Once you next boot into the game, a brand new default graphics settings CFG will be created, so you can revert that back quickly and easily at any time if you wish to do so, because this will make your game look very bad, but you will see huge performance gains. This now moves us over to the last few settings and optimizations we can now tune specifically for your PC, as there isn't one setting is best for all systems. If you're still running into lower than expected performance or your FPS drops quite drastically, especially an Intel or AMD GPU, you can try out the DirectX 12 renderer. You'll more than likely find that your overall FPS is slightly lower, but your FPS drops may be less, and this could solve performance issues on some systems. Play a few games, jump into this, switch it to DirectX 12, play a few games, and see what works best for your system. And now leads us into FPS caps and potentially utilizing G-Sync or FreeSync if it's available. If you don't wish to go with G-Sync or FreeSync, I would highly recommend that you at least manually cap your FPS, because you will see drastic latency results that even beat NVIDIA Reflex when set up properly. The key things to bear in mind when utilizing an FPS cap is you don't want to stack FPS caps. As Reflex low latency is a dynamic FPS cap, if you're going to manually cap FPS, make sure that you turn Reflex low latency to off, otherwise these will potentially conflict with each other and give odd results. At this point, jump into a live game. You then need to see what FPS you're able to get on your system about 95% of the time. Yes, you're giving up some of that extra FPS on the top end, but you're actually gaining a massive reduction in input latency as you are taking a lot of the load off of the GPU core, which gives you that massive input latency reduction. So play around with the FPS cap for your system and try and cap your FPS at a number where it basically never drops below that. Now, my recommendation with practically all games, if you're on a 240Hz monitor or above, I would highly recommend that you utilize G-Sync or FreeSync if it's available. And you can check out my guide on how to quickly and easily set up G-Sync or FreeSync with the best settings, utilizing the link in the description down below. I would highly recommend it. It's unmatched how smooth your gameplay will be. But if you don't wish to go to a separate video for G-Sync, a very quick run through on how to set this up. First of all, need VRR enabled on your monitor. You then need to enable G-Sync or FreeSync in your NVIDIA or AMD control panel. V-Sync must be switched on inside of of the NVIDIA or AMD control panel. With VSync off in the game, your highest refresh rate inside of the game needs to be selected alongside NVIDIA Reflex for NVIDIA users, and AMD users will need to cap their FPS 10 to 15 FPS lower than the maximum refresh rate in the in-game built-in FPS cap. And there you guys have it. Let me know of your thoughts on XDefiant, what sort of guns you've been using, and the performance improvements you were able to see from watching this video in that comment section down below. If you're interested in more optimization content, would like to get more out of your system, or see some settings videos for other games, make sure to check out the playlist section in the description down below, and I'll see you guys over there.